I was a teen mom. My son is now 20 years old. He's almost a junior in college, and I found out I was pregnant when I missed my cycle, right? That's obvious. It was a couple months and I noticed that it hadn't come on, but I was in extreme denial. Granted, you have this young 16-year-old girl, I'm still in high school, still have the rest of the world to figure out life, and now she's missed a cycle and possibly pregnant, because at that point I know I had been a little irresponsible and not doing exactly what I needed to do with my then boyfriend. So I was in denial to the point where I bought a two-door car because I just didn't want to believe it. And 9 months later, of course, that's when he came to manifest. So, well, I grew up in a Christian home, so my parents were very much into church, and not just into church, but very much into God. So me doing that, there was a lot of shame. There was a lot of embarrassment. It was even looked at as if I was being disrespectful and, of course, irresponsible at that point, because I was just a young girl. And I grew up in a two-parent home, so it wasn't like there was anything missing. It wasn't like I was reaching for attention or anything of that nature, but I was a rebellious kid, just to be blatantly honest with you. So I wanted to do things on my own. And everything that my father told me not to do, I figured that I would do anyhow, which got me into that type of predicament. But, you know, even though I felt shame and I felt embarrassment, I was a person with a lot of pride. I was a person that would speak her mind, and I had a very strong mind even at that age, despite the, you know, the mistake that I made. But I stood my position. And I was determined to not allow that situation to cause me to be a statistic. I was determined to prove people wrong, that despite of the mistake that I made, that I will go on and I persevere and I would be something great. So I looked at the opinions and, you know, the views of others, and I took those things into consideration. But honestly, those things helped to fuel me in my life and to where I am now and where I desire to go. Right, yeah, there was a lot going on, and you know, in the school that I went to, you know, it was all about competition. It was all about who has what and who has the latest and greatest. So then you throw a child in there. You know, it was very hard. I was in my senior year, and it was extremely hard. You know, at that point, although I still felt like I wanted to do great things in life, one of the things I wanted to do was go into the Air Force. And I feel like at that point, you know what, this is gone. This dream has fallen to the ground. I'm not going to be able to do that. So what is going to be my next move? But even in that, my peers, it wasn't an issue so much with my peers, but of course the teachers looked at you, you know, a certain way, and they kind of looked down on you. But even with that, I still had teachers that believed in me. I still had teachers that knew that I would be something great. They knew that, okay, this is a mistake and, you know, you're going to get past that. But I would lie to you and tell you that it was easy, because it was not. For me, being in my senior year, it was a little easier because I was getting ready to graduate, as far as, you know, getting up in the middle of the night and then having to go back to school. But one thing I did have, I had a supportive family. So despite the mistake, my family was extremely supportive. They helped me. I worked up until the time I was having my son. So it wasn't like I was just sitting around the house and being pregnant and, you know, my life is over. No, I was still determined. I was still determined to make something out of myself. I went to work every single day. I worked overtime. You know, I was still very busy and still very active in doing what I needed to do. So although there were negative stigmatisms and, you know, things that were around me that were telling me that you're going to fail, it's not going to work out, you're going to be a product of your environment, you're going to be a statistics, I took all of that and I used that as energy to fuel me. Well, the biggest lesson I learned from all of that is that I was in control of my life. I was in control of my destiny. So every decision that I made, that it would affect my tomorrow. Every decision that I make today, in the present, the current, it affects my tomorrow. Like back then, I wasn't really thinking about now per se. I wasn't thinking about, okay, this kid is going to grow up. I'm going to be his mother. I'm going to raise him to be something great. I'm going to, you know, I'm raising someone's father. I'm raising someone's husband. You know, I'm raising someone's CEO. I didn't think that way back then. But the biggest lesson, you know, even now looking at it, is that I was in control of my destiny. And despite a mistake, despite, you know, making a decision that is looked at negatively, I was responsible for making sure that I become the best version of who I was. So, you know, if I can tell anything to any youth out there that are pregnant, that is even contemplating, because honestly, you know, unfortunately, you have, you know, young couples that are out there and they feel like, okay, we have a baby, we're going to be complete and things of that nature. If you're not pregnant yet, I will tell you to wait. I don't condone teen pregnancy, and I don't look down on people that do make that mistake, but I would tell you is don't make an intentional mistake or decision, because you have the rest of your life ahead of you, and every decision you make right now, it will interrupt or interfere with your life at some point. I know my son said to me one time, because I graduated from college years later and then ended up going back and getting 2 degrees, you know, but he said, Mom, you know, by you having me, did that destroy your life? And you know, I was a little taken back by it, and I told him, I said, no son, it did not destroy my life. You know, there were some delays and it caused some things not to happen right away, but it didn't destroy my life. So what I would tell you is that, you know, don't do it in thinking that this child is going to bring some wholeness and completeness to you, because it's a job. It's a job. And like I said, my son is almost 20. He's not 20 yet. He's almost 20. It's still a job. You know, I'm still mom. I still have to be there for him. I still have to, you know, financially be there for him. And unless you're in a place where you are well-rounded, socially, emotionally, financially, spiritually, and there's so many other things, grounded, you have no business, you know, getting pregnant. For those that are pregnant now and you feel like, you know, this is the worst thing, don't fret. Don't feel like your life is over, because I can guarantee you that it is not. But what I will tell you is be intentional. Be intentional about your self-development. Be intentional about not allowing this decision to ruin your life, not allowing this to be the end of anything, because honestly, it can very well be the beginning of your life. I have a mentee that, you know, got pregnant at 19, 20 years old, and she was devastated. And I told her, like, don't allow it to stop you. Don't allow it to void out your dreams. Don't allow it to discredit you. Don't allow people to discredit you. Now, will you have to work twice as hard? Absolutely. Will you have to persevere and you know, make your mark in the world, and will people look at you negatively and as if you're, you know, a nobody? Absolutely. But even in that, like I did, I will tell you to use all of those forces, all of that energy, rather negative or positive, use it to become the best version of who you are.
I didn't actually find out I was pregnant. My mother told me I was pregnant. We were in church and she kind of saw a little baby bump. And so once we got to the house, she was like, you know, I need you to take your clothes off and I need you to, you know, let me see what's going on. And so from there we went to the doctor, and that's when we really had a stamp on I was pregnant. Reality kicked in. And so my first thought was, I can't keep this baby. I'm only 14 years old. And my surprise was I was already 7 months. So even if that was, I mean, there was nothing I could do about it, even if it was a thought. Well, we can't get away with what's life, and we try to be, good parents. And I don't blame my mother, but she was a single mother, and so she wasn't there a lot of times, and I was basically finding my own way, which kind of led to what it led to. And so now I have an 18-year-old son where I did the same thing, always worried about work, and trying to make sure the bills is paid and making sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And now I'm a young grandmother. Like, he followed right in those same steps. So it's like, you just, it's easy to point the fingers when you're not in those shoes. My mother was somebody who did the same thing, but when she became a person who was going through that situation, like, her whole thoughts changed, and so my thing is, when you have kids, you just have to balance it out, like work and making sure you keep that relationship and making sure they're comfortable with talking to you and keeping things very open, because it don't matter how good of a parent you are, like, if you don't be there, they're going to find their way, and it's not going to be how you want it to a lot of times. Yeah, it definitely put me in a different mind state. I couldn't afford to, I just couldn't afford to do what teenagers did when they didn't, the ones that didn't have kids. And I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed for my mother, and I was embarrassed for myself. I had family members coming by, making her feel bad, and it made me feel bad. And so it was summertime going to high school, and I was like, I don't want to go while I'm pregnant. And so I just did homebound until I had the baby, and then I went to school. But her thing was, you need to finish. I'm going to help you, but you need to finish, and you need to make smarter decisions. And so when I got to high school, I was just about my schoolwork. Like, I don't have time to be socializing with these teenage boys who hormones are raging. Like, I already have a baby, and it's like, I felt like I owed her that much. Like, you owe yourself that much to finish and do the right thing. And so that's the path I took. So no babies yet. So my baby is almost 19 years old in a little bit. And so that's just what it is. Alright, big lessons that I've learned is that you have to be there for your kids. You have to find a balance, and sometimes that don't work. Kids, I feel like they get out here and they develop their own sense of personality, and so sometimes that's not even the answer. You can just do the best you can as a parent. But I think he definitely, not only is being a single parent triggering, but I think the fact that his father isn't around also, so he knows the importance of making sure he is a good father as well, especially being that she's a sickly baby. So all I do is I just continue to inspire him. You have to finish, even though you want to do other things, you have to go out here and you have to make better decisions, and you have to always keep her in mind. And, you can't afford to put yourself first anymore. So he's on the right track, and he knows what he has to do, and he puts in as much time as he can. And so I just hope that he continues to be the best he can and learn from his mistakes, or I want to say mistakes, but learn from bad choices that he made and carry it on, so we can kill this cycle of teenage pregnancy. So that's what I hope. Well, I'm not sure how common it is for, I've seen a lot of teenage pregnancies since my time, and it seems to be more supported than it was during my era. And so that's why you still find teenage parents turn around and pregnant again. So, and that's why, even though my son is a father, I make sure he knows that this is your baby. And I have to, at sometimes, even if I want to help, I have to let him do things on his own so he can understand how hard it is. And if you feel that way with one baby having sickle cell, like, how would you think you would be able to make it with more than one? You're already complaining. And so it's nothing to, you have to be safe all around the board. You have to make sure, you just have to be safe. That's all I can say. You have to be safe, and you have to make better decisions, and you have plenty time, to do the adult thing or to pursue whatever you want to pursue. But education is important. It really is. And I'm not saying that if you do get pregnant that you still can't get education, because I'm a prime example of it still can happen if you really wanted to. And so I just made a promise, and I stuck to it, which is I'm not going to have any babies until I'm ready, and I'm going to reverse this cycle of people feeling like because you have babies early, your life is over and there's nothing you can do, because that's absolutely not true. And so if you are pregnant and you are a teenage mom, it's not easy. I cried plenty mornings because I had to work late nights, and I had to go to school early in the morning, and when I got home I had to tend to a baby. And so it's not easy, and it's definitely different when you're the mother versus the father. So you just have to pray about it. definitely got to keep God first, and you have to pray about it, and it'll get better. Definitely.
So, I found out that I was pregnant. Very obvious sign for women, young women, my period didn't come on. And it was April of 2000. And I was 17 years old. And so I went to a place called Birthright. And Birthright is someplace you could go and get a free pregnancy test. And they offer different resources for mothers, young, because most people that go there are like, teens or people who didn't plan to get pregnant or whatever. So I went there and took the test, and they told me I was pregnant. So that's how I found out. And I found out in April of 2000, and it was April of my junior year in high school. So, well, I was in a situation with, like a lot of young ladies. I had one of my closest friends had just had a baby. My friends were having babies. So it was like, it wasn't so much like it was glorified, but it was happening, right? And I was very embarrassed. I was very disappointed in myself. I was very afraid or very, very nervous, which a lot of mothers feel. But at 17 years old, I was already living on my own. So it wasn't like I got pregnant with this thought of, I have a home to necessarily fall back on. Though I had people that loved and supported me, I knew I was kind of out there with, me and my child, my unborn child. Teen moms get a bad break. You automatically get considered promiscuous, or you're a whore, or something similar, something along those lines. I got pregnant my third time having sex. I knew quite a few people who were teen moms who got pregnant their very first time having sex. So it wasn't like I had been having sex for a long time, but all it takes is one time. So I feel like, looking on it now, I have a lot more compassion. I didn't judge women at the time that I became a teenage mom, because I had been around so many teen moms. It was almost like it had been accepted, and that's not a good thing. And I noticed that in certain environments, in certain cultures, it still seems like that. It's kind of like an understood thing. And that's why I do a lot of the mentoring work that I do, because I know that I got pregnant. It was a external outcome of a situation of just, a lot of doubting myself, low self-esteem, a lot of questions about my parents, and, not really knowing how to handle life. And so just kind of latching on to this young man, because I was lacking in so many different areas. So when I look at teen moms now, and I hope I'm answering the question, but when I look at teen moms now, I really don't feel much different than I did when I got pregnant. Like, it's like I know the truth. Like, before it was like, well, I know everyone is a promiscuous, and I know, but now it's like I know, because I was not. Like, all teen moms are ignorant. Like, I was like an all-A student in honors classes. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like society does put the stigma on young ladies, and I feel like, we have to be very careful about how we judge people, because a lot of times you really don't know. And so that's why I try to be supportive and do a lot of prevention, so that we have less teen moms, because a lot of it is just it's just a cry for help in some way, shape, or form. And just a baby came about from it. Oh gosh, you asked some great questions. So, what was it like being pregnant in high school? For me, it was very embarrassing. It was stressful. I felt like I was grown, because I was going through things at home. So, like I said, I was already out on my own, so I felt like I was an adult. But when I got pregnant, it's like I didn't want to be an adult anymore. Like, I wanted somebody to really, parent me. And I just, that situation was just so messy at the time. But being in high school, so I got pregnant my junior year, and nobody knew I was pregnant. So when I came back that from summer break to start my senior year in high school, I was noticeably pregnant. So here again, it was embarrassing for me. It was shameful because I just felt like I knew better. I felt like, a lot of the rebellion, the hurt from the things that I was going through, those things that seemed like they were so important and made so much sense for me to do what I did, I started to see the repercussions of that. So for me, I dealt with it, but like things like, I had a lot of people that wanted me to run for homecoming queen. And I had a few guys ask me to walk with them. And I was like, I'm not going to run for homecoming queen. I'm 6 months pregnant. And they were like, no, you can run, and everybody knows you. And it's like, I was like, no. And that's when it hit me like, look at what making these adult decisions did to your childhood. You know what I'm saying? And you did it out of hurt. You were in this whole relationship just out of not really understanding you and how you fit in your family dynamic. So for me, it was stressful. People around me may not have said that because I tried to, act like everything was okay. But it was embarrassing and it was stressful. The biggest lesson that I got from getting pregnant at 17 years old was take your time to grow up. Like, you have your whole life to be an adult. You only have 18 years, quote unquote, to be a child. So take that time and don't make adult decisions if you don't have to. For me, I would say let people know how you feel. Express it, or journal or something like that, so that you can get your emotions out. Because what happened for me and a lot of other people that I spoke with, we had other issues going on, and we were finding that these young men in our lives are almost like a pacifier. Well, we know a pacifier pacifies. It doesn't fix the problem. It kind of patches it up. And so therefore you have long-term outcomes from a short-term fix, so to speak. So, talk to someone. If there's someone available, journal, just do something to get it out. And so that's the biggest lesson that I learned. And what was the other thing you said? Advice that I would give. So if there's a young woman that's pregnant right now and you may feel like, oh my gosh, my world is at an end, or a lot of people get pregnant, family members, and people start to disown them. People will say really mean things sometimes. And I just want to let you know that God doesn't make mistakes. Like, this baby may have came out of a situation that you didn't plan, but the baby itself has a purpose. And I know that my daughter has a purpose in my life. I would not be doing what I'm doing had I not had her when I did at 18 and 5 days old. And just the things that we had to go through. I probably would have not been alive had I not had her, because my self-esteem was so low, and I contemplated suicide more than one time. So the biggest thing I want to give you advice about is don't give up. Your baby is not the worst thing that could happen to you. Your child is a benefit. Your baby is an asset to you. Don't think a child can ever fill a void. The love that you need to give to that child doesn't have anything to do with any voids that you may need filled in your life. So I encourage you to work on you, and the more you work on you, you'll be a better parent to this child and be an asset to society, so that you can help others and turn a seemingly negative situation into a positive.